how bad can it be? Honey, I'm going to quit my real job with real benefits and jump into this water. And she looked at me and said, you've never not done what you said you were going to do, so go and do this.
Welcome to StaffBuffalo's Pain Points Podcast. Hi, welcome to another episode of the Pain Points Podcast. I'm Lauren Lewis, and I'm here with Larry Mietus, aka Leadership Larry, founder of Speaking of Strategy, business consultant, and author. Larry, thanks so much for joining us. So excited to have you. I know it's going to be an amazing conversation.
I'm thrilled to be here, Lauren. I really am. I've done a number of podcasts in the last 6 months, but I couldn't wait to get to this one.
Oh, good. Why?
Why? Because it's you.
Oh, you're the best.
And your audience, and in a great setting. And
yeah. And it's fun. We're going to have a lot of fun. And just really, I would love to have you tell us your story about how you got to where you are today in your career and founding Speaking of Strategy and working with different businesses and pain points they overcome and your journey to becoming an author. All of that is extremely admirable. I hope someday to write a book. Larry's book is We Tried That Once and Other Popular Excuses That Sabotage Business Success. It's a great book. Make sure you pick up a copy if you're interested, and Larry will probably tell us more about it as well. So
I can answer all that in 30 seconds.
Do it. Perfect.
So. No, what do we want to
That's why this is going to be a fun podcast.
Well, the honest truth is I've been very fortunate my whole life. Most of the jobs I've had, outside of maybe 2 that I can remember, were things I wanted to do, career paths I wanted to be on, and I spent many, many years in corporate America and loved it. Had some great jobs, worked in some great places with some phenomenal people that I'm still friends with and have relationships with. But when my kids, when my boys, our children are 32, 29, and 25. And when they were going into high school, my brain started moving around that Cats in the Cradle song where dad wants you and now you've got no time for dad. And I thought, I don't want that to happen to me. And with a quote unquote real job, as my mom used to call it, I couldn't have done a lot of the things that I did or my wife and I did together with our kids when they were in high school. And I went out on my own, left corporate America really for the sole reason of wanting to control my own time. Period.
And did you just leave? Like your corporate job?
Well, I gave them ample. I mean, my boss knew a year before I left that, and he's like, look, I totally get where you're coming from. The employer I was with had a great reputation of if you left on good terms and never wanted to come back and there was an opening, no questions asked, you were back. When I look across the board at my staff and who you do and who your peers are and all those things, he said, you're the guy who can do this. And so I went home and said to my wife, honey, I'm going to quit my real job with real benefits and jump into this water. And God bless her, she looked at me and she said, you've never not done what you said you were going to do, so go and do this.
Amazing.
It's
awesome to have that support and backing.
Amazing. And I always laugh because my wife knows every week to the penny how much your paycheck should be. And if it's off, she's talking to somebody. And I say things out loud like, I think I'm getting paid this month. And she'd be like, what? And
you think?
Sure. What does that mean? But I've been very, very, very fortunate. And when I look back over my life, I've always had sort of this problem-solving, servant leadership mentality back to when I was a kid. I mean, there were things in my family that I just had to step in and figure out when I was growing up. And then when I got a little bit older, actually I'm 6'1", I was this tall in grade school. I went to Catholic grade school. In 6th grade, in December, they said, okay, you're the tallest person in the building. In the play, you're going to be the Christmas tree.
Oh.
And I said,
the Christmas tree.
And I said, I'd rather be the narrator.
Yeah.
So I wrote the script for the Christmas show, and it was the first time I can remember speaking in front of a lot of people, and it didn't bother me at all.
Which is such a skill. So many people are afraid to speak in front of people. And
I just went home and said, that was cool. Because everybody, inadvertently, accidentally, even your parents. When you go home and you're in English class and you say, we're going to do public speaking, all your friends, your family go, you don't want to do that, you're going to be nervous, you're going to sweat, people are going to laugh at you, blah, blah, blah. And my brain just went, how bad can it be? We're all going to do it.
I'm a big believer, and sometimes you just got to dive in head first and do something. Rip the Band-Aid off and do it. Yep. And that's where you learn, that's where you grow, that's where you really figure out who you are and what you want to do and where you want to be. And I always tell people, too, if they're nervous about standing in front of an audience and speaking, there's a lot of people in that audience that wish they could be on stage doing
Right.
what you're doing.
Right.
So you're really just setting the example and setting the tone for other people and giving them the courage to maybe rip that Band-Aid off and do it at some point.
And they're
too.
so happy that it's you up there and not them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes when I speak, I've been speaking for decades, and sometimes I know, especially if I'm in town, and Buffalo's a small town, I'll be in venues where I know someone has seen me before. And I'll say, anybody ever hear me speak before? And somebody will raise their hand, and I'll be like, great, let's swap seats, and I'll just relax. And they're like, nope, 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 nope,
I'm
we're
like,
good.
I'm good. I got my coffee. I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. So we can use the same jokes and all of that. But when I look back at my career, I was always fortunate. I mean, I lied about my age to get my first job. I was 15 years old. It took me a year to get caught in that lie. And I told my sons that story one time.
Oh my
and I said,
gosh.
this is why you never lie, because it comes out of the dark somewhere and zaps you. But I was solving problems when I was working in the grocery store at the age of 15.
So you lied about your age to get that job in a grocery store.
Yeah. And how I got caught was a year later, I'm slinging gallons of milk in the dairy aisle at 10 o'clock at night. And the manager said, I'm really confused. And I said, why? He goes, well, you're a pretty personable guy. You're a decent looking guy. He goes, all of your friends, and I worked with all my high school friends in the same store. So they've all asked off for the prom. He said, why aren't you asking me off for the prom? And I never broke stride slinging my milk. And I said, why would I go to the prom? I'm a junior.
Oh.
And back in the day, juniors didn't go to the senior prom. And he looked at me and he said, so a year ago you were 15? I said, yeah. And he said, we never had this conversation. He turned around and walked away.
So they weren't doing I-9s back then or checking
Nope.
your driver's license.
I had that little green
identification.
card you get in high school that says I'm allowed to work after 9 o'clock or until 9 o'clock, whatever. And high school issued that, and I was good to go.
You're on your way.
Yeah.
Never stopped then.
Yeah. But I've always, I recognized in myself, I'd like to bring people together. I'm a connector. I like to help people solve their problems or reach the level of success they're aspiring to have. And I just want people to be successful. It's really not about me being successful. It's about, can I make other people, can I help them collaborate? Can I put opportunities in front of them? My youngest son, John, went to college with a young man who went to school for sports management. And on graduation day, I kind of was sitting there going, dude, how are you going to find a job?
Right.
Like, what are you going to do? And he told me what his dream job was. He said, I want to work for the Buffalo Bills. So to his credit, he was from New York City.
Mm-hmm.
They graduated. He took a job all the way in California to work for an AHL affiliate of one of the NHL teams. And it was ground level, selling tickets, period.
Those
Account
are hard
executive.
jobs to do. We work a lot of hours and you don't make a lot of money.
No.
That's where you got to start.
No.
To get anywhere in sports.
And one day, lo and behold, I'm in my office and a thing comes across, I don't know why, comes across my LinkedIn that says Buffalo Bills are hiring an account executive. Not 3, 1. And I sent him the link and I said, this is you.
Yeah.
And he goes, how did you know about this? I said, I didn't. I said, and I know what you told me. You told me this is your dream job, so you have to go and nail this. I said, and you have to keep me informed.
Yeah.
And a week later, he sent me a screenshot that said he had a phone interview. And a week later, he said they want me to come to Buffalo and face-to-face interview. And 10 days later, he called me and said, they hired me.
Aw.
And he
How
said, they
awesome.
interviewed over 200 people. He goes, they hired me. I said, I knew they would. I said, because I know who you are. And I
Yeah.
know what you wanted. I said, now the only problem is you got to like nail it every day.
Absolutely.
You know, just go in there and crush it. So it's things like that where if I brought these two parties together, that makes my day.
And even it was like kind of passively bringing them together,
Yeah.
right? You just happened to see it on your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You remembered that conversation with your son's friend.
Yeah.
Saw it?
Yeah.
Hey, here you go.
He said to me, should I tell them I know you? I said, they don't know me. It's not going to matter when you show up. Don't say that. You know,
Right.
just be you.
Right.
But and I told him, I said, you're like a little Jerry Maguire. And he's just personable, good-looking guy. He's a hustler. And I said, you can do this. It got him back to Buffalo. And I said, look, if you keep your nose down and do your hard work, you can be there the next 25, 30 years if
Yeah.
you want. Like, the rest is up to you.
Right.
And so it's little things like that. And when it happens in business, it is just that much more satisfying.
Absolutely. And I think so much of business, and this is why I love like having a business in Buffalo, is making connections with people.
Sure.
You get to meet so many amazing people at so many different organizations. And I love connecting people, whether it's something StaffBuffalo or HR Buffalo can help them with, or I know someone that can help them. I know someone that maybe needs leadership training and development training for their team, strategy training. Well, call Leadership Larry.
Yeah. It's funny, and sometimes there's a lot of bad things said, and you can go the wrong way with social media. But I always believe in building your network, maintaining your network, putting more into your network than you take out. And a couple of years ago, I got pinged by a college in Vermont, and they contacted me, and the gentleman said, I want to talk to you about consulting us. And I'm like, how did you find me? He said, I found you on LinkedIn. And I said, but there's thousands of consultants on LinkedIn. Like, why are you calling me? And he said, look at my picture. He goes, look at my picture really hard. And I'm like looking at his picture going, okay, used to have more hair, used to be thinner.
Oh my gosh, so you
He's like,
remember
we
too?
went to grade school together.
Wow.
He goes, and I trust you. I'm like, wow.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And that's the power, I think, of the Western New York community too. It's like you always want to, someone you know, whether it's 20, 30, 40 years ago, they might remember you and come back around at some point.
And you know what?
And that's, Western New York community, could be any other community too, but I feel like there's something special about this Western New York community.
There is. And I tell Gen Zs and millennials, they look at me kind of funny because my references are dated because there is no phone book anymore. But I'll say, I used to say to people, especially younger people, take every category in the phone book: architect, banker, cook, dentist, electrician, and make sure you know someone, not know a name, know someone in that field that you can refer your friends and your family to. Because let's face it, when someone comes to you and says you can trust this person, they're honest, they're fair, they're a person of integrity, it takes so much pressure off of you to find that person.
Oh yeah.
Or trust random reviews. And as business people, we love it when other people say, hey, call this person, call Laura, call our company, StaffBuffalo, they can do what you need them to do. Boom, your defense mechanism goes down, you jump in.
Absolutely.
So it
breaks the ice that much easier too.
I always say, no matter how technologically advanced we get, including artificial intelligence, which I'm all about, we're still people behind all of that.
And I think it's important to maintain the humanity behind all of that too. You need that people perspective.
Absolutely.
I am such a people person. I prefer in-person meetings. I love that. I feel like you connect differently when you're with people in person rather than over Teams or Zoom or Google Meet. It's just different. You can't have those sidebar conversations as easily. It's harder to build rapport, get a feel for someone or their demeanor, how they're sitting, how they carry themselves. Like that can go a long way in helping you communicate effectively with that person.
One of my Larryisms is the magic happens at the water fountain and on the way to the car in the parking lot. That's where people, all those other things are great, but it's hard to make the same bond. You can't read body language. You can't have a sidebar conversation. And that's where it really happens, where you start to really understand people and trust them and watch their mannerisms and see how they treat other people and all those things.
And that's huge, just seeing how people treat other people too. It says a lot about someone's character when you see how they treat the UPS guy or the server at the restaurant. But it goes a long way of how you treat someone.
Yeah. When I got hired, I worked at Bryan Stratton College for 10 years. And after I got hired, they told me the first person they got reconnaissance from was the front desk receptionist. And they said, we want to know what he said, how he treated you, blah, blah, blah. I'm not with all the department, but they said, like, she put you over the top because people just weren't nice to the front desk.
Exactly. And I had a similar situation in pharmaceutical sales. I remember going to like the regional office and sit down, and it's just the receptionist sitting there, and that was part of the interview. You didn't know it, but that was part of the interview. Like, when you come in, how did you treat the receptionists? How did you greet them? How did you introduce yourself?
Absolutely.
What did you do when you were sitting there waiting? In the waiting room too. Like, were you quiet? Were you off your cell phone? Were you still sitting there professionally, like respectfully, kind of minding your own business, but also astute to what's going on?
Observant, right?
Yeah. It's a good test, I think, for sure. It shows a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hard to do that on Zoom.
Yeah, you can't do that on Zoom at all. When you're working with clients and people, is that something you talk about, like their communication style and how they communicate effectively?
Absolutely. My theory is this. The farther you advance in your career, the higher you go up the corporate ladder, if there is such a thing, whatever you want to call it. And I say to the leaders I work with, when you get to a certain level, first of all, the difficult thing to do is let go of your management DNA. Because people keep diving into the trenches. And I go to CEOs and go, look, you hired a team of people that you allegedly trust. You're paying them well to do the job you hired them to do. Could you just get out of their way? And years ago, some people listening, watching will recognize the name Scotty Bowman, who was one of the most successful, but one of the most feared coaches in the NHL by the players. really had two personas. He had the nice guy next door neighbor persona and the not so nice whispering in my ear on the bench persona. And one day I interviewed him when I was working in the media, and I said, how does this work? He goes, I have one job. I move the barriers that are keeping them from being successful. They know how to play the game. They know the rules. They've known that since they were this big.
Right.
They don't need me for that. They need me to help move barriers that are inhibiting their success. So when I coach leaders, I say the same thing. I'm like, look, your job is threefold when you get to this level of an organization. You focus on the communication, you focus on the culture, and you focus on the people. You still have to know some of those other things and be backfilled, but you don't have to do and know those things every day.
Right.
It's about culture, communication, and people. And when you look at some of the great companies in Western New York, you look at the Wegmans, you look at the Westers, you look at the Scott Beeler leadership role models that are out there, and how wildly successful those companies are. It's all about leadership.
It's totally leadership. And I know Scott Beeler read, you tried that one. So there's a really nice review from Scott in the back. And for people who are outside of Western New York, Scott Beeler is the president and CEO of Western Automotive Group, which is a huge automotive group in Western New York and beyond. I don't even know how many dealerships they have at this point, but they just keep growing. Is it 40?
It's 40.
It's amazing. But his review was, we tried that once as a valuable source of concise information to help you improve and grow your business. It is a great reference of material for you and your team to go back and review and refresh the necessary steps to manage your organization and to accomplish maximum results. I highly recommend Larry's book as a must-read for you and your entire management team. I think this is such a great review because the book is concise. It's easy to read. It's practical. There's great tips at the end of every single chapter. But this is a large organization that continues to grow. I think it says a lot for their professional development that they are continuing to use different strategies and different resources and books to help bring different perspective to their leaders and the leadership team as well.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about Western is I heard Scott say one time in a presentation, about 95% of their executive people were all promoted from within. But they'll never go to 100% because they're still smart enough to say there's somebody out there who thinks a little bit differently, sees a little bit differently, and can bring something different to our culture that'll make us even better.
Absolutely.
So the bulk of their leaders are homegrown, but they're not saying that's the goal. And when you're in their facilities, you can feel it, you can see it, you can hear it. It's not lip service, it's not the flavor of the month, it's who they are, period.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's awesome. What are some of the other big pain points that you work with clients to overcome? Like, are there the top three recently that you keep hearing over and over again?
I would say, honestly, unfortunately, since the pandemic, I talk with a lot of CEOs and business owners who can't even get their arms around it and describe it. They just keep saying it's not the way it used to be pre-pandemic. And that could be revenue, it could be sales, it could be staffing, it could be morale, it could be all of the above. But they're struggling with how do we get the train back on the track and accelerate. We don't just want to chug along at the pace we're at now.
Right.
In recent times, I mean, let's face it, you see all the data, Forbes, Gartner, all these major places. Employee engagement is at record low levels. I read an article the other night that said roughly in the U.S., self-reporting across every industry, white collar, blue collar, publicly traded, privately held, doesn't matter. About 55% of American workers are like, hey, I'm just here for the paycheck. You go to the UK and look at their data, it's 9 out of 10. 90% of their employees are saying, I could care less about my job, but I need a job. And I've always said, people who hear me speak have always heard me say, as Americans, especially as North Americans, we don't spend more time anywhere else than we spend at work. We don't eat more, we don't sleep more, we don't recreate more, we work. And so when I find people who are miserable at work, I feel so bad for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally have met people who are like 19 months, 47 days, 62 seconds before I punch out for the last time. And
I'm like, gosh, that's no way to live your life.
Wow. like you're either going to have a heart attack before that happens or something else is. And it's funny because like when you really do the research, and if you watch the old black and white movies, like the 30s, the 40s, the word retirement is based, I believe, in the German language system. And retire used to mean I'm going to sleep at night. I'm going to retire for the evening. Get up the next day refreshed. Somehow we turned our mindset in the U.S. to, if I live long enough, stay healthy enough, save enough money, I can retire and do what I really want to do. And I look at people and go, why are we turning that around? Why aren't we doing the jobs we like now, pursuing our passions earlier in life, still maintaining our health?
Right.
And I get we have to pay our bills and have health insurance and all those things.
And this keeps going up. Don't get me started on health insurance, Larry.
It's so rare to find people who are passionate like you about what they do for a living. I already told my wife, I said, look, I cannot see me retiring. Even if I work 2 days a week and I cherry pick the projects I want, why would I stop doing what I'm doing? Because it never felt like work.
Right.
I have a friend in my industry who's 93 years old. He still works every day.
That's amazing.
He's like, Larry, I love what I do. Why would I stop? This is not work. I'm lucky to get paid for what I love to do.
Right, absolutely. I think it's important. I think for some of us too, I'm 40.
Mm-hmm.
Retirement doesn't even seem like it's close.
Right.
Or even a thing. And it's like, who knows when I get 65 if it'll even be something that's available.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to find what you love to do. And I think even if you do retire from a career you've had for a long time, it's important to find something else.
Oh, yeah.
Something else to keep your mind active, keep you active.
Think about that now. You should think about that now because I've got like 2 lanes of friends. In one lane, they're retired and they're absolutely miserable. But the other ones who aren't knew a decade ago where they would channel their energy and they built a plan. So they got out of bed on day 1 of retirement and said, I'm going to coach this, I'm going to volunteer for this, I'm going to lead this. The other ones said, well, maybe I get a part-time job because I'm climbing the walls. Well, you should have thought about that a long time ago. But it's sad that our culture is there. And when I look at, and you can't blame them, when you look at Gen Zs and millennials, and they saw what happened to their parents and their grandparents, and to me, the history of leadership, the backfill on this is the day after September 11th and those tragic events, people all over the world woke up and said, I want to be with my family and my community, I want to work less. So organizational psychologists predicted back then that we would have almost 4 decades of limited bench strength, of young people going, that's not for me.
Right.
Okay? Just pay me and I want to go home. Well, then fast forward, we had 07, 08, 09, the market crashed. And millennials and Gen Zs looked at their parents and said, you almost lost the house, or you did. You lost your entire 401k. So this 4-letter thing called work, like what's so great about it?
What am I doing it for?
And why were you so loyal?
Why are you your job?
Yeah. Then comes along the pandemic, and we all know what happened there with great resignation and all that self-awareness, which is great.
Resignation, quiet quitting.
What's my worth? What's my value? What am I really doing? Work from home, hybrid, all that. And now, with the numbers I shared before about this low level of engagement, the workforce is in rough shape, and leadership and management are in rough shape. And we've got to start talking to people, I think, younger in school systems about what does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to have additional responsibility? And quite honestly, I mean, a lot of my clients and contacts are entrepreneurs. And I'll go to them and say, did you become an entrepreneur so you could work 90 hours a week, ruin your personal life, and have stress more than you can handle? Or did you have a different vision? And if you had a different vision, let's get you on that.
Get back to that, yeah.
Because there's no rule book that says you have to be miserable if you're going to do your own enterprise.
Right.
So a lot of the way we think about work, I think, has to be continually rethought. But your question was, you're like, what do I see with challenges from employers? It's usually staffing issues, it's profitability issues, it's competitive issues. I'm still amazed that sometimes I'll say to companies, talk to me about your competitors. And they're talking about companies within a 5-mile radius. And I'm like, what about those guys halfway around the world? Oh, I'm like, global economy? Like, hello? And sometimes they don't give that any thought at all. But we all have to work, unless we're independently wealthy. We all, thank goodness, try to stay healthy. But I would like to see, and I think sometimes people think I'm a little out there because I'm big on fun at work. Like you're spending so much time.
I love having fun.
Like, let's have some fun. And when you look at the organizations that have that mindset, or even the pro sports teams, Bills had a great year this year, but they said we have a culture in the locker room that's fun. We get along with each other. We don't point fingers, and look how far they went. And it makes a huge difference.
You can tell when you see them on the field that they have fun. They respect each other. They get along. They have each other's backs. Yeah. And that goes, you can tell this season would help them get that far, as they did. Fortunately, they did not make it to the Super Bowl, but they got pretty close. I would say my clients, especially for a season when they were not. Everyone was saying they're not going to make it. They're going to do the playoffs. They're making the playoffs, and they made it.
I've been saying to my clients for years, look, we're not launching missiles. Calm down. I've only had one client that was launching real missiles, and that was fine. But I'm like, okay. And quite honestly, since September 11th, I've had this little mantra in my head that I say to other people, and I say to myself every day. On September 12th, for some reason, I woke up that year and I looked in the mirror and I said, cherish your family and your friends. Live every day to the fullest and keep things in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, we're still making mountains out of molehills when there's almost nothing there.
Right.
And I think not that I'm living a perfect life or I'm on a shining example, but that's kind of how I keep myself on the beam.
I think you always have to learn. You always have to grow. How can I improve? How can I get better?
Yes.
We're all gonna make mistakes. We're human, but you learn from that and you grow from that.
Exactly.
We are operating on EOS at StaffBuffalo, and so we do L10 meetings with each division of our organization, and we start them with the personal win and professional win. And sometimes the personal wins, it can be something simple. I try to remind the team, if you can't think of one, you got out of bed this morning, or you made it to the office safely. Those are big wins.
Those are wins. Yeah.
It helps you reframe your mindset when you think of those little wins and are grateful for just even the little wins in a day, because there can be some days where it's tough and you're struggling and you feel behind on your work, or you're in the middle of a stressful move. Something like stuff happens. It's life, but how do you get through that?
Exactly.
And it's thinking about those little wins and the things you're grateful for every day that help you keep moving forward. We mentioned earlier about the generations in the workplace, and talking a lot about what we said earlier with pandemic and in-person relationships and communication. I'm finding that a lot of the younger generations, the people who are still in college or recently out of college, the young professionals, they want to be in the office. They like going to the office because they learn from their supervisors, they learn from their teammates, they collaborate, they have their friends and colleagues in the office.
Right.
They're doing some more social things, whereas sometimes if that generation or any generation really is working from home, it's so isolating.
Right.
And you're not having social interactions anymore, and they're not learning how to communicate socially with other people because you're just talking to a computer.
Well, I think about especially our sons and during the pandemic years. One day I kind of did the math with them and said, okay, not just work, but not going out at least one night every weekend. There was a span of their lives where they really missed the opportunity to meet thousands of people, not hundreds of people, thousands of people. And I think that's not healthy. Most humans are geared to interact with other humans. And it's a lot easier to do it this way than through technology. But we're rewriting the rules of work. We're rewriting the rules of leadership as we speak because of the current events of the world and things that have happened in the last few years. And I really think it's healthy, because I think the younger generations are especially better at saying, I'll take less money to work for an organization that has a better mindset, a better culture, and a better social consciousness.
That's huge too, the social conscious aspect.
Yes.
Yep, they want to feel like they're being part of a mission and something they're passionate about too.
Sure.
And even if that organization does not, in an industry that is mission driven or that they support, but allows their employees to take part in volunteer activities or be a part of organizations that they are passionate about, like volunteering for nonprofits or sitting on boards, if your company supports that, you just feel that much more empowered to do it.
Yeah, and not that it's easy by no stretch of the imagination. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But I look at some of the younger entrepreneurs who are wildly successful locally, and most people don't know their backstory of how much dedication and pain and suffering it took to get there. But the fact that they took the chance at a young age and made something happen, I really believe that almost anybody can make something happen if they set their mind to it. And really, you got to learn how to turn out the naysayers.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, my mom, God rest her soul, she was well into her 60s. She was still saying things to me like, well, when you go back to having a real job, I'm like, Mom, if I can help it, I'm never going back.
Yeah, you're like, I'm good.
Yeah, and she used to say to me, that it was so cute, she'd say like, well, I don't know how to explain to my girlfriends what you do. I said, tell them I'm in the witness protection program, and we can't discuss anything else. And she's like, I can't tell them that.
Yeah.
But,
we did something once for social media where it's like, ask your parents to describe what you do.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to see hear the different perspectives. Some parents nailed it, some were way off.
yeah, it's exactly. But you know what? I mean, kids are coming full circle. They're adults living at home. The economy's kind of out of whack. I mean, you look at mortgage interest rates today versus when our one son bought a house during the pandemic. It's huge, a huge swing. And my challenge as a dad is always, you think you taught your kids a lot, But you still have to remember there's certain things they don't know because they haven't experienced it yet, or they haven't lived it yet. It's not real funny when they look at you and go, well, how would you know?
Right.
Because then you go, well, I've done this 100 times. But as they get older and more experienced, you hear less and less of that. And the same is true with entrepreneurs. I mean, there's that fine line between throwing all caution to the wind and taking that high level risk, or being strategically risk oriented, but understanding what could go really well, what could go really bad, and
Right.
making decisions. And usually you'll land in the middle.
And being conscious about it.
And being
aware.
conscious and strategic about it. The word strategy, speaking of strategy in my business, the word strategy scares people. And I tell my clients, my prospects now, I'm like, look, strategy is a plan that's written in sand. It's that granular and it's that fluid. There is no quicksand, there is no concrete, it could evaporate 5 seconds from now. But never having a plan is dangerous. One of my favorite questions, I'll look at people when I meet them, especially if they own companies, and I'll say, just answer me in percentage terms. Look over your shoulder at the success of your business. Tell me what percentage of that success was based on luck and what percentage was based on strategy. And they always look at me and they always laugh out loud and go, well, I've been really lucky.
Yeah.
And that's great. I'll take luck any day. But then they look at me and go, but if I dosed in some strategy, could I have been that much more successful? And the answer is, of course.
Right. And I think the luck can get you so far.
Sure.
But you need the strategy also to help maintain it when the luck might run out.
You can run out of luck.
Right? So you need that other strategy there to keep that business moving forward and helping you adapt your business to the industry, the economy, society, whatever it might be, whatever you're involved in. You have to always kind of be thinking, how do I mold this and make it work in different ways?
Again, pandemic, right? We had companies in Buffalo making craft beer. Some of them, I think, unfortunately went out of business during the pandemic. Some of them turned around and said, can I use the same people and the same equipment to make hand sanitizer?
Right.
Yes, you can. And guess what? When you go back to making beer, the first few rounds might be a little extra bubbly. We're not sure why. Over time, that goes away.
Yeah.
And I've always said the companies all over the world that survived the pandemic were already on a path to do that before we knew what COVID was. But the companies that didn't survive, long before that, were on this path of demise or complacency, and they didn't see it coming, and that pushed them over the edge because they didn't have a strategy to be flexible and think on their feet.
I think even when you have your sales going really well, you still have to put your foot on the gas.
Sure.
You know, maybe we're not accelerating as fast as when the sales aren't great, but you have to make sure you're staying ahead of it for when things start slowing down.
Sure.
Maybe your team's really busy and things are going great, but like at some point that might stop. So you got to stay ahead of that.
Yes.
So you're always maintaining potential clients and new clients and staying relevant within the industry you're in.
Absolutely.
Larry, let's talk more about We Tried That Once. What led you to write We Tried That Once?
Well, I always thought I was a good writer, and I referenced earlier the fact that I went to Catholic grade school for 8 years. So, boy, I could write, I could spell, couldn't really do math all that well. Had to develop that skill later in life. And it was always there in the back of my mind. And literally, I thought about it on and off for probably a good decade. So, guilty as charged, procrastination. And I just didn't want to write because, as you know, as we all know, there's hundreds of thousands, there's millions of business books out there and leadership and management books. And I just kind of let it float. And literally like a movie, I woke up one night at 3 a.m. and it was there in my brain and it said, write a book about the excuses you hear from your prospects and your clients. And I woke up, I wrote down all the ones I could think of, and then I ranked them in rank order of which ones I hear more often.
Yeah.
And that's how the book was born. 13 excuses, 13 chapters, and 106 action items of how not to either fall into the trap, perpetuate the trap, or tolerate the culture that lives by these excuses. And the whole premise of the book is, look, if you're coming to me saying, we can't be successful, we can't get this done because of fill in the blank, well then let's investigate. Let's do some root cause analysis. If there's a real issue to solve, let's solve it. But if you just got used to letting someone walk into your office every week and say, no time, no money, no staff, no this, see ya, then maybe there's something else going on here.
Right.
Maybe we're not applying ourselves to a real thought process.
Is there a chapter in this book that really stands out to you of really being maybe the biggest?
I think it's the
excuse
chapter. I think it's the chapter I called that culture stuff is crap. Because even though I'm a strategist and my company is speaking of strategy, I've always said, give me an A culture, and a C strategy, and we'll win. Give me a C culture and an A strategy, we might win. And define win however you want, market share, revenue, whatever it is, happiness. But I've seen that. I've been in the workforce since the age of 15. And when I look over my shoulder at companies I worked for, worked with, consulted, whatever, it's clear night and day. The ones that consistently come out on top have a great culture.
What are the biggest action tips you would give someone who maybe has that A strategy but C culture, and how to flip that around?
Well, it's funny because people call me all the time and say, "Can we go to lunch and we can figure out culture?" I'm like, it takes more than 30 minutes.
Yeah, I was like, it's a long time.
It takes 24 to 36 months, and this has been documented, to turn a culture around. And the reason is, you come into work on Monday, great idea, you write a book over the weekend, you're all excited, and you look at your team and go, we're going to do this. By Wednesday, you never mention it again.
Right.
And people go, oh, Lawrence, flavor of the month, that'll pass. Just let her keep talking. By Friday, she won't even remember saying that.
Yeah.
But when you go in every day and say, this is our heartbeat, this is who we are, this is how we treat people, this is how we treat each other, and we're not backing off, there's usually then a divide of some people that go, oh, this is really the way we're going to move forward. It's time for me to leave because I don't fit in. Or
Exactly.
let's band together because this is who we are moving forward forever.
This is what we're doing.
This is what we do. This is
Yeah.
how we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's super important. And it takes time. They had to see the leadership team leading that way too, leading in that manner, communicating that. Even just with EOS, we've been doing it probably about a year and implementing that with our team. But it's really taken a year to kind of find our groove. Almost the first year is like, let's just figure this out, figure it out together. It's helped us get some things in order and on track. We've met some of our goals that we set a year ago. But now it's like, we kind of know what the formula is for that. So This year's gonna be even different with that. But like, I think our team, that Maggie and I came in one day and was like, all right, we're doing EOS, and here's how we try to like bit by bit show it and talk about it throughout the year when we are talking about our goals or issues we're having as a company and how we're going to get through those issues and how we're going to chip away at some of the tasks we want to achieve throughout the year too. It definitely takes a lot of time. It's not
And a
really
lot of dedication. And
overnight
when you're at that
success.
leadership level, you have to touch culture every day
Mm-hmm.
because it can evaporate in a heartbeat.
Oh, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
you recruit to it, you promote to it, you discipline to it. It's great to have an employee handbook. Most people don't use them.
Right.
Did you sign that?
Yeah, we signed it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I signed it. But when you know what to expect every day at work, when you know how you're going to be treated in good times and bad times, when your team knows that they can lean on you for direction as a leader, that's huge. Especially when you're in unpredictable economic times.
Absolutely.
It just gives people a sense of footing, of stability. And I'll honestly tell you, some of the people I met at West Her would look at me and say, well, they went to Scott and said, we don't care if the plan doesn't work. We don't care if you change the plan every hour. We just feel so good knowing there's a plan.
A plan. Mm-hmm.
And no one knew really if it was the right plan because we had never lived in that type of world before with supply chain issues and all these other things.
Oh, yeah.
But it was better than them going home saying, nobody knows. We're just going to hope it works out.
Hope for the best.
Yeah,
Fingers
exactly.
crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
I love the chapter too about, I don't like conflict. Some people thrive on conflict. Some people really stay away from it and don't have to deal with it. What are some of the biggest issues you've seen around conflict with your clients?
Well, conflict avoidance. And I think, again, we've been raised the wrong way when it comes to what is conflict. Conflict, in most people, their mind goes to, we can't be friends anymore. I'm right, you're wrong, you're the enemy. That's not what it is.
Right.
It's, look, something's happening here. Let's discuss it like adults. Let's treat each other like adults. Let's respect each other. It's not me telling you what to do. Those days are over. It's us figuring out what to do together. And quite honestly, there's sometimes a time in an organization where certain people have to leave and move on, and hopefully the organization becomes healthier. I still meet people who think they're going to hold their company hostage. Well, if I leave, good luck to them surviving. I'm like, okay, what time is it now?
Yeah.
Okay, see ya.
Yeah.
And tomorrow I think we're still going to be here. And we don't wish ill will on anyone.
No.
But like I said earlier, I want companies to think about that culture where the majority of the people want to come to work, want to contribute. They know they're trusted. They know they're empowered. It's an adult work environment. It teaches people how to make decisions. It's funny because a lot of owners have said to me over years, I want my people to think like an owner. And I'll look at them and say, when was the last time you taught them how to do that? And they say, well, I don't have time to do that. I said, well, then let me help you teach them, because they don't know what it's like to lay in bed at night staring at the ceiling going, am I going to make payroll?
Right.
Do I have to take out a second mortgage on my house? If there's ever a lawsuit about anything, I'm named in that lawsuit.
Yep.
It's a big ball of wax to manage, and a lot of people don't think about that. One time we had one of my clients, we had a guy use some very colorful language to reject the 25 cents an hour raise the employer was offering his department. And he went through me and said, you tell him on my behalf, blah, 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 blah. So I went to the CEO and I said, do I have your permission to show them all the financials?
Right.
And teach them what it means to run this business.
Yeah.
I said, sure, yeah, knock yourself out. I sat down one morning with this gentleman at 7 o'clock in the morning. I said, tell me about your house. I said, you've got income, you and your wife. Yep, okay, that's your revenue coming in. How many expenses do you have? He's like, oh, gas, electric, cable, water, food, insurance, maybe 10. I said, okay, here's the spreadsheet for this business. There's 88 line items of expenses. His jaw dropped. He was like, really?
Right.
Really? I said, and just because the company makes so many million on the top line doesn't make the owner a millionaire.
Correct. Absolutely.
Oh. And that's fine, because we're not teaching these things in school anymore.
No.
You know, when we got done, and I said, trust me when I tell you, the goal is that there's profitability at the end of the year that the owner can share with you. This guy stood up and said, do you think I could go and talk to the CEO and apologize and ask for my 25 cents back? I said, you know what, I got a funny feeling he's going to give it to you.
Yeah.
But now him and his cohort in that department, they understood.
They understand. And it might be a little more motivating for them too.
Yeah. One of the
like,
best books I ever read.
Of the organization and like the goals, and if you share that and what you want to do, where you want to go with it, let's talk about how we get there.
Yeah.
And we're on the boat. I was a rower, so we're all rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
To get to the finish line.
Yeah. The Great Game of Business by an author named Jack Stack, his real name, one of the best books I ever read. I think it was referred to me by Jerry Mietus, who's also a consultant, and it really said, look, most adults like to play games, but most adults like to win. Mm-hmm. So if you treat business like a game and people understand the rules and how you really make profitability, not how you make things and stuff and services and goods, what it means to be profitable and how every single person contributes, that becomes a game. Mm-hmm. And the company that was referenced in the book that was purchased by management level people who turned it around and guaranteed the gentleman who did that in that book, in that story, I think it was the division of International Harvester, they went to every single employee on the first day they were the new owners and said, do you have a mortgage? What's your mortgage balance? Do you have a mortgage? What's your mortgage balance? And they did that math and added it all up and they said, this is our promise to you. If this thing totally tanks and we really mess this up, we're still going to make sure we have enough money that all of you can pay off your mortgages.
Oh, wow.
And when people heard that, they said,
how do we do this?
They taught them business.
Yeah.
And I always laugh. I don't mean to disrespect, but I said, look, most business people don't wake up every day, open their eyes and go, let's lose money today. No. Yeah, I know there's lost leaders and lost divisions and things that you lose money on to get you into the grocery store. That's part of the big equation, the big math. But most people want to be successful. And when they understand that in their role at work, how they're driving that mission, that vision, and that profitability, it makes a huge difference. Mm-hmm. And I think you still get people like, oh, well, I don't get paid to think at that level. True. How would you like to get paid?
That's a different question, exactly.
Think at that level. Because I've been in companies who sometimes people are very complacent, which is fine. And they say, I get my 3.5% cost of living increase every year, and that's cool. And I walk in and do the math and go, how would you like 17% next year? This is what we have to do to get there. Do you want to help too? Or do you maybe want to think about it?
Yeah.
And most people are like, show me the money.
Let's go there.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's
do
go.
it.
Because they didn't know before how the thing really worked.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more you engage your employees, the more engaged they are.
Yeah.
Too. They feel empowered. They feel like they have some skin in the game.
It's not about titles.
I think it's just important too. Like, let's make decisions together. Mm-hmm. Let's work collaboratively. Or you have an idea to try something. Let's talk it through. Let's see how it works.
Exactly.
And it makes it more fun, too.
One of the smartest marketing brains I've ever met in my life was a gentleman riding around all day long, 8 hours a day on a forklift in a warehouse. He was brilliant. And I said to him, would you like to join the marketing team? He said, no, you can talk to me when you want, but he goes, I want to be alone all day. He had such, and he said to me, he goes, I've got 8 hours a day just to think. Just to think. He goes, and most of the time I'm here, I'm thinking about this stuff, then I'm moving around. I'm like, this is brilliant. He was a genius.
Yeah.
But did the CEO ever go back there and ask him?
Probably not.
No.
Can't imagine.
No.
Yeah.
No. I'm a huge fan of, I call them SOCs, State of Company meetings, and most of my clients, 3-4 times a year, we bring everyone together, physically or through technology. And it's always sales year-to-date versus goal, sales versus this time last year, or a 13-month rolling snapshot. The good news about us and our people, what we need to know about our clients or prospects, some form of professional development, and we're done. And anyone can ask the C-level people anything, as long as they ask respectfully. And if people walk out of that meeting and say they don't know, they either weren't paying attention.
Right.
If they don't come to the meeting, they chose not to come.
Right.
No one can say, I don't know what's going on here.
Right. Yeah, or they didn't take the opportunity to ask the questions.
Exactly.
So, Larry, what's next for you?
Well, you know what?
What are your goals this year?
Last year was my best year for traveling to speak. I'm very passionate, again, about my speaking. I've been very fortunate, very blessed to be able to speak in some very cool places in front of some very neat audiences. And I'd like to take that even farther. This year, I just did a job in Paris. I did a job in Australia. Am I going to get them? I don't know.
You got to put your
But you got to be in the ring to play, right?
Yep.
That's where a lot of my focus is. I'm always going to consult and have my consulting clients. I'm very fortunate there. I wake up every day knowing how fortunate I am to do what I love, what I'm passionate about, to have a family that understands how I'm geared and why this is important to me. My best friend is my wife, my soulmate, love of my life, and she gets it. She's like, do your thing.
Yeah.
You're good at your thing, do your thing.
Keep doing it.
And quite honestly, if I couldn't do my thing, you might bump into me some night moving carts back at the grocery store I started with. If I had to, I would.
I do have a feeling if you were doing that, you'd be like best friends with every single customer coming in and out of that grocery store.
Well, you know what? At the end of the day,
you could chat with them all, you'd greet them, you'd make that experience that much better shopping at that store.
We have one common bond all over the world. We're all people. And when we remember that, and we all have success stories, we all have hardships, we all have issues, but we have to remember, especially with technology, there's people behind all of this.
Right.
And somebody might be having the best day of their life, somebody might be having the worst day of their life, and we usually don't know. But if we're sensitive to people and open and honest, it all goes from there.
Absolutely.
I don't really think I see another book on the horizon.
That was my next question, is if there's another book on the horizon.
Someday there will be, but I still think I've got farther to take this one. I mean, there's certainly more than 13 excuses in the world.
Yeah.
But even some people have said to me, like, 13, unlucky number. I said, not in my world. I said 13 chapters worked for me. And it was really neat because the writing experience, when I thought I was done with the book, I called my publisher and he said, do you like it? I said, no, I don't like it. I love it. He goes, really? I said, really? He goes, good, then you're done.
Wow.
He goes, put down the pen, you're done. He goes, if you told me you liked it, I'd make you go back and rework it till you loved it. He goes, but if you think it's there, it's there.
Yeah.
And the highest compliment I think I've been paid about my book is when people read it, they say to me that they feel like they're talking to me, they hear my voice. And that's a compliment because too many people use ghostwriters.
Right.
They write one chapter in the book. And I've been to a lot of seminars in my life because I read a book I liked and went to see the author speak. And there was such a huge disconnect of, did you really write that?
So it loses the authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And that person loses their authenticity too.
Because they're using a different language system, different humor. And I'm like, there's no way you wrote this whole thing by yourself because that's not who you are.
Right.
So I've been fortunate there, and quite honestly, it was never about the money. I'm never going to be on the New York Times bestseller list.
You never know. Don't say that.
Well, I did find out. I did my homework in advance before I wrote the book, and the honest truth is, for all the books in the world, most of them that are nonfiction sell 500 copies, and that's it.
Oh. How many copies of this have you sold so far?
I honestly don't know because I don't always see my sales reports.
Okay.
And Amazon it's a world of its own. If you think you know the algorithm. An example, I can be ranked in short read business books on a Wednesday morning at number 5,000. If you and Sherry buy a book, you buy 2 books, in the same day, I'll shoot up to like 550.
Right.
Like quantum leap with 2 sales.
Which is 2. Yeah.
And it's like the stock market. And 3 hours later, it starts to come back down. But I really did it for credibility.
Yeah.
Because I don't really think it's fair, but I have the same advantage as a speaker. When I can give any presentation that I've written on any topic and drive in hours to Rochester or 2 hours to Syracuse and speak and charge X. And trust me when I say it's not about the money. But if I get on a plane and I fly to Las Vegas and I give the exact same speech with the exact same level of intellectual knowledge and intellectual property, I can charge X times 10. Because event planners go, well, he's coming 3,000 miles. He must know something.
Right.
And as a speaker, probably the second and third question on every application I ever fill out, every RFP to be a keynote speaker says, what have you authored? It doesn't make me smarter than anybody else. It just means I had a little extra discipline to write it down and get a cover on the book and all that. And the amazing thing is millions upon millions of people write every day and they journal, which is lovely. But only 5% of the population of the world are published authors.
Which is amazing. It's such an accomplishment. Yeah. It's a goal of mine someday to write a book. And maybe someday I'll get there.
I'll help you.
Okay, thank you. I will definitely reach out for that. Well, Larry, I hope this year you get more speaking engagements. I hope you go to Paris and Australia and get to travel so everyone else can learn from you and appreciate your energy and your enthusiasm and get to experience that because it's contagious and amazing and you do a great job connecting with people and businesses and provide great value. If someone's looking to connect with you, how can they get in touch?
They can either email me, it's leadershiplarry, one word, @gmail.com, or Google me. I come up, thank goodness, high in Google search all the time. I also call myself the Chief Excuse Obliterator, CEO.
Oh, yes.
So if you Google Chief Excuse Obliterator, you'll find me. If you throw my name into Amazon or Barnes & Noble, I'll come up. I'm pretty populated, like in the first 5 pages of Google search engine. You know, people want to call me. My phone number is all over all those sites. I'm happy to answer the phone. I don't keep my phone number a secret or anything like that. The one thing I did want to share before we end is sometimes it's like, listen to everyone out of the mouths of babes. I was completing my master's degree in organizational leadership, and I was in my capstone class and kind of figuring out where to go with my career. And we were at the dinner table in our kitchen, and at the time my youngest, John, was 5 years old. And he could sense I was a little like, where am I going to step here? And he looked at me and he said, well, you'll figure it out, Dad. You're Leadership Larry.
You're Leadership Larry.
And I'm like, what did you just say?
It's your brand.
And boom.
There it's been ever since.
Yep.
I love it.
And, so far he hasn't asked for any royalties, but we'll see what happens.
Maybe someday.
Maybe
I'll think about that trip to Paris with you and that'll count.
There you go.
Well, thanks so much, Larry. It's been an awesome conversation. And
thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Pain Points Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Pain Points Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to follow us so you never miss out on future episodes.